Hey, how's it going? I'm not dead. I'm hoping this is the last week that I have a weird release schedule and I'll be able to slide back into my Tuesday videos, and then hopefully soon after that, once I get my schedule fully hammered down, I'll be able to go back to 2 videos a week. Maybe that'll be sooner than I think it is, but I don't want to get people's hopes up. I've been reading a lot, but I haven't been able to complete a lot yet, which is pretty frustrating on my end. My new job has absorbed a lot of my time, and I'm trying to get through the early hard parts of dealing with that schedule while then being able to find new spots for me to get videos done and get all this reading done. And I think I'm figuring it out, but I just need a little bit more time, and for that, I'm sorry. But I do have some fun stuff coming up. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer is going to be a video that I have coming out next week. I finished it. I've got a lot to say about it. I'm really excited. And then hopefully Rhythm of War will also finally be coming to completion soon. You know, I made enough jokes. It's a big book, and I thought I could do it faster than I could, but then a whole bunch of things started just slamming in my way, so that'll be getting done very soon. Well, I wanted to do this video just to make sure that, you know, to let you guys know I'm okay. I also wanted to give you some new content. So this week I actually did read some shorter things. I read 2 graphic novels, Raven and Beastboy, written by Kami Garcia and Gabriel Piccolo. I've been following Piccolo on Instagram and Twitter for a really long time, and I've always loved his art, so I was really excited to see him get a chance to be able to take that art and expand it into a full storyline. And I've loved his designs for these members of the Teen Titans, one of my favorite superhero teams, so this is just perfect. Kami Garcia before this is probably best known for her Castor Chronicles series, which starts with Beautiful Creatures, which I think got a movie at one point too. I don't know, I've had that book sitting on my shelf for like 11 years and I haven't read it, so I'm coming in with absolutely no knowledge on her writing style. I'm obviously going to be spoiling these comics, so this is your spoiler warning. So if you want the quick review before the spoilers start happening, here it is. I liked both of these a lot. I think if you're a fan of Teen Titans or comics in general, you'll really find these two to be enjoyable to read. The art is beautiful, but I may be a little biased on that. I've always loved Piccolo's art style, especially his depictions of Raven and Beast Boy. But yeah, I'm gonna give these books 5 out of 6 batarangs. So you can pause this video, you can go read them first if you are interested in that, and then come back to this, or don't, you're not my sidekick. But let's get into it. Let's talk about Raven first. I think from a character perspective, this is probably the stronger of the 2 graphic novels. The through line of Raven struggling with this amnesia and figuring out who she really is extremely interesting to me. I think some people might not like the way that Raven is depicted in this comic because she isn't 100% like the Raven you might be familiar with from the Teen Titans cartoon or many of the more mainline comics that she's in. But that's done on purpose, and I think it's actually done really well here. Her having this amnesia and not really knowing anything about herself allows for us to explore Raven as a character before she has to lock herself away from all of those emotions. And I think the punishment for exploring those emotions is really interesting as well, because we get the payoff of seeing who Raven really is and being able to like her, as this is her introduction to readers for some people. Being able to like the character and then seeing that she has to then pay for those emotions is really interesting too, especially her storyline being Raven. And I think we're going to see a lot more of those costs she's going to have to make in the future comics, like the mashup between Beast Boy and Raven coming up soon. The romance in this comic was fine. I really hate the trope of new kid comes in, is actually the pawn of someone evil, tricks the main character into love, but then it's even worse when then they're like, oh, but I do have feelings for you and I don't want to do this thing. I don't really care about that trope at all. That storyline is boring to me. I've seen it 1,000 times and it never ends interestingly. It feels lazy almost to default to that. There could have been a legitimate relationship here between Raven and someone that she meets at this high school, and then after she has to deal with Trigon and realize that she has to suppress her emotions a lot, she would have to choose to break up with this person despite it being against what she wants, whereas seeing this guy as evil at the end, she's able to easily do it and not really feel too sad about it, and she feels more burned than having to do the burn, and that doesn't feel good. She has to give something up for this win of being able to re-imprison Trigon, and we don't really feel that here. I like her foster sister Maxine, even if she kind of mistreats the boy that's following her around, especially when she shuts him down for prom again and again, and then finally when she needs him to go, she calls him up and says, hey, let's go to prom together. I think that's really manipulative and gross, and to see it kind of just brushed past in this comic feels a bit bad. But I think the relationship between Maxine and Raven is done really well, and she serves as a really good example of fighting against that trope of weird kid gets adopted by a family and the kid who's originally a part of the family acts really awful towards the new kid, and for them to bond here feels good. They've got some good scenes together. They've got some nice bonding moments. Overall, it's a pretty okay relationship to have. There's nothing great here or memorable, but I think a lot of that has to do with Raven's amnesia and coming into this as a complete stranger to everything. You can't really have those more deep interactions because they just met essentially. But honestly, I was way more hype about the 2 girls fighting the homophobia of the South single-handedly by going to that prom together, by asking each other out. I was so invested in them, and they had so little screen time, and I was kind of upset by that because they seemed like fun characters, and had they been more forefront for more of it, it would have felt better. They seemed like they were a part of this friend group with Maxime, but they never showed up on screen before the prom in like a very prominent way. They had a lot of depth. for being tertiary characters like this. A complaint? I'm not really sure that Kami Garcia knows what an empath is. We get a lot of mixed signals in the story. Raven's told that she's an empath. We're told that she's able to feel emotions, but when we see it happen, she's just reading minds. She could be a telepath that still lines up with some of Raven's abilities, but for everyone to explain to her what's happening and then for that not to be what the reader is seeing feels a bit confusing. And then we don't really get a lot of explanation on her Raven shade or her ability to cause bad things happening, like making that popular girl choke or trip. Those are powers that she has that maybe get explained a little bit later, but the fact that she doesn't even mention them when she's looking for help is a bit confusing, and the fact that those are more like worries, maybe she's chopping them up to the fact that Trigon is there, and so she's avoiding them that way. I don't know. That's more of a we're gonna have to see in the future if they deal with these powers thing than a big complaint for this story. I love that we got some of the voodoo magic in here from DC Comics. Some of that different representation of heroes in a more mainline book is always fun to have, and it reminds us that, you know, the world of DC is very vast and very deep, and for these two characters to come in and for us to have that really awesome scene of all the voodoo ghosts coming and helping out, it was really cool. And it gave that really good opportunity for Raven to talk with her mother again in like a very Harry Potter-esque way, but you know, I still liked it. It was fun. Overall, I really enjoyed Raven for Raven, but the secondary characters kind of left me wanting more. Beastboy, on the other hand, has a stellar supporting main cast, and I think it handles Slade significantly better than Raven did. But I've got my own gripes about Beastboy. I think the story feels a bit more complete as a standalone than Raven did. While they are both origin stories, Raven is setting up a lot for the future with Trigon and with Slade, and that all becomes more forefront story. And the actual romance and the prom, they all feel like secondary points to feed this Trigon issue. And that's definitely got to do with giving Raven amnesia and losing those more deep ties with characters as she's going through her high school days. And I accept that that's going to make some of the story a bit weaker while empowering the character depth of Raven. But this Gar origin story feels way more cohesive, meshing the growth of him into Beast Boy and a standalone story arc for him as Gar, with Slade being significantly more background, only showing up in 1 or 2 scenes, and Beast Boy not even understanding who he is at the end of the story. It allows for more forefront characters to have a lot of important growth, like his friends. I love the storyline for Tank and his struggles into figuring out he has dyslexia. Some people might say that it feels unrealistic for him not to find out until his senior year of high school, but I mean, people go undiagnosed with many things until late into their 20s, so I think it's a good representation to show that some kids might feel broken or wrong in some way, and there's something that they just haven't figured out yet, and once they do, it might help a lot. It's also really good at showcasing that this is a friend group that will be there and help hold up their friends when they're in a bad place. It's kind of unfortunate that this storyline didn't echo into Gar's storyline. It felt like it was a setup of promise that these friends were going to stick together through thick and thin, and then in the end, Gar just goes off on his own anyway. I certainly hope that they don't just drop these characters and have it just be the Gar and Raven show for the rest of it. I hope maybe they'll come back to these areas, or maybe those characters will venture back out and help them. I don't really know how that'll work yet, but I would much rather that than just have these characters who I actually came to like in this story to just disappear. His streamer friend Stella is also really good, and the three of them have some great interactions with each other while they're trying to help Gar figure out how he can become popular in some ways, like when he's eating the ghost pepper or whatever. I feel like with the interaction we get between him and his parents, he overreacts a little bit when they tell him about how he got his powers. I think this origin for him is really interesting, his scientist parents trying to just find any way to help their son. But I wish they played up this feeling of him feeling like a test animal to them, just another statistic or just another experiment for them. This would have been a better character conflict between his parents and him, but it's like a 2-line fight that they have. If they had emphasized this a bit more, I think we could have seen a lot of interesting stuff come from it. Maybe we'll see this confrontation be re-heightened and have a bit of a longer conversation about it later on in a different story, but you know, it is what it is. I wish they had done this here. It would have been a lot of strong setup for these characters that we don't really get. I still loved his antics when he's trying to become popular. I think those are classic Gar, and when he makes fun of himself as defense to keep people from bullying him, I feel like that's a really strong character moment for him. And like I said earlier, I think Slade fits way better in this storyline. He shows up and he kind of tricks Gar here instead of being the clear future villain for Raven. And it felt very weird for Slade to so obviously show his hand to Raven and then for him to try and play the long game for Gar. I'm not sure what's going to go on there. Maybe we'll see it in the future, but it just seems like a bit of a mismatch on his character desires in both of these books. But that's a complaint for the future if that gets resolved or not. But there you have it. My thoughts on these two graphic novels. I really like them despite some of my nitpicks. I nitpick because I really did enjoy these these stories, and I just want them to be better so that more people will find them and enjoy them. I think Kami Garcia did a really good job for being someone who doesn't have a lot of experience in the graphic novel writing space. And of course, Piccolo popped off with his art here. I think the muted monochromatic style that he uses, where it's not black and white, it's a lot of blues and purples in the Raven book, and then a few things have a lot of rich color to showcase them, really works well in these more stylistic DC comics. I'd certainly recommend these books to people who like superheroes in general, and then definitely people who have read Teen Titans or watched Teen Titans and like that. I think these work really well as standalones, whereas a lot of DC and Marvel comics, you kind of have to read a whole bunch to understand it. These are origin stories, and they're going to build into more, and so starting from here, this is a good 0.0 for these characters. But if you like what I had to say here, please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and comment what your favorite origin story for a DC hero is. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Until then, stay lit.